Pioneering the art of flying, safeguarding the Indian skies, serving the nation in times of war as well as peace. Indian Air Force. People first, mission always. Ever since its establishment in 1932, every challenge has been an opportunity for the Indian Air Force. Every obstacle has been a chance for the Indian Air Force to prove its mettle. Flung into action by the sudden and unprovoked assault upon the state of Jammu and Kashmir in October 1947, the Indian Air Force rose to the occasion with matchless alacrity. The air bridge between Srinagar and Delhi, established by the Indian Air Force as the raiders poised for their final sweep through the valley, helped save the state of Jammu and Kashmir for India. Though not called upon to employ in an offensive role, the Sino-Indian border conflict of 1962 saw the Indian Air Force adequately fulfill its limited role of providing transport and logistic support to our troops all along the Himalayan borders. 1965 war with Pakistan was the next big challenge for the Indian Air Force, as the enemy ground forces intruded into the Chamb-Joria sector at 1600 hours on the 1st of September. Air Marshal Arjan Singh, the then Chief of Air Staff, was asked by the Defence Minister as to how soon the Air Force could render support to the army, and he replied, within an hour. The words were kept as 4 Vampires delivered their rockets on enemy Patton tanks. 26 sorties by Indian Air Force missed air, and Vampire aircraft were launched on the opening day of war in the sector, destroying a large number of enemy tanks, guns, vehicles, and effectively halting enemy armor offensive. On the 3rd of September, the first enemy aircraft, the formidable F-86 Sabre jet, was shot down by the much smaller Nat, piloted by Flight Lieutenant Trevor Keeler, earning the Nat the nickname Sabre Killer. By the 6th of September, the enemy's ambitious operation Grand Slam had been slammed shut. In sheer desperation, they launched a preemptive strike against Indian Air Force bases at dusk. It was time to take the war to the enemy. As the Indian Air Force launched punitive strikes over Pakistan air bases, the Indian Air Force continued to provide the necessary support to the Indian Army. It did close air support, fighter sweeps, interceptions, interdictions, and counter-air operations. The Indian Air Force carried out almost 4,000 sorties in the western sector and dropped 335 tons of bomb load. The enemy suffered an estimated loss of 43 aircraft, a large number of tanks and vehicles. The credit goes to the valiant air warriors. Starting September this year till September next year, the Indian Air Force is commemorating 50 years of the 1965 war. The 1965 war heroes were recently felicitated to commemorate the 50 years of the air operations. It was a moment of pride for the heroes as well as the Indian Air Force. The Indian Air Force consolidated in the years that followed, prepared both in body and sinew. It was ready to meet the opponent in the next round in 1971. The Indian Air Force Hour of Glory. The service was put to the supreme test and was able to prove the preeminence of air power in the defense of the nation. To recall, after the surrender by Lieutenant General A.A.K. Niazi and his 92,000 troops. When asked why he had surrendered when his army was still intact, he pointed at the pilot's wings on an Indian Air Force officer's uniform and said, "Because of this, you, the Indian Air Force." Another opportunity to serve the nation presented itself in May 1999. This victory was a milestone in the history of military aviation, as this was the first time that air power was employed offensively in such an adverse environment. The Indian Air Force has embarked upon a modernization drive and improved its capabilities in aerial combat aircraft as well as radar coverage. Most of our newly acquired aircraft are now fully operational. Among the latest inductions, Mi-17 V5 is now successfully used for night operations. Recently, it carried out operations in the Glacier. Pilatus trainer aircraft is now being used for Stage 1 training of the Indian Air Force budding pilots. The formidable C-130 and C-17 have proved to be major shot in the arm for the Indian Air Force transport fleet. Existing fighter aircraft like MiG-29, Jaguar and Mirage 2000 are being upgraded to add to the might of the force. There are many inductions planned for the future to strengthen the force. These include light combat aircraft, medium multi-role combat aircraft, very heavy transport aircraft, replacement for Avro aircraft, the attack helicopters and heavy lift helicopters. A trusted partner of air warriors and the workforce of the Indian Air Force, the MiG-21 FL Type 77 was phased out in 2013, an emotional moment indeed. The Indian Air Force continues to do yeoman service in disaster relief operations. The Indian Air Force played an important role during the devastating flood in Uttarakhand. In just 65 days, the Indian Air Force airlifted 23,892 civilians and carried 800 tons of valuable relief material. In the more recent Jammu and Kashmir floods, the Indian Air Force is leaving no stone unturned with its Operation Megh Rahat. 3,000 sorties have been carried out to drop 4,500 tons of rescue material and evacuate 48,000 people, even surpassing the Herculean effort in Uttarakhand last year. We are proud of our air warriors. Be it war or peace, the Indian Air Force is committed to serve the nation. Indian Air Force, we are the power of the nation. We are the guardians of the sky.